She was running. Twigs scratched her arms and legs. Roots tried to trip her, but she did not care. The voice of the tree followed her in her mind, calling, begging, whispering sorrow that twisted her stomach, yet she could not stop. She burst out of the forest just as the last glow of the sun disappeared, the shadows of the trees stretching long behind her like dark fingers. She ran straight through the village, past huts and market stalls, past startled villagers who shouted, "Adaora, what is wrong?" She could not answer. She could only scream, her voice raw and panicked, her eyes wide with terror. When she finally reached the safety of her compound, she dropped to her knees, gasping, tears streaming down her face, her heart still pounding. It spoke to me, a tree, crying, calling my name, she cried, clutching her chest. Ugoma's eyes narrowed, and she stepped closer, wagging a finger. "What nonsense is this? You are mad, girl. Trees do not cry. Stop this foolishness, or you will learn what it means to disobey." Adaora shook her head, panting, trying to make them understand, but the words would not come out clearly. All she knew was that deep in the forest, she had seen a sorrow unlike any she had ever known, a sadness that spoke to her very soul, and in that moment, she feared, and yet something inside her stirred, a strange curiosity that would not let her forget. That night, after the fire had died down and the moon hung low over the village like a silver god, Adaora lay on the cold floor of the kitchen, her thin blanket doing little to keep out the chill. Her body still trembled from the sight she had seen in the forest, and though she tried to close her eyes, sleep would not come at once. The darkness seemed to press in on her, and in that stillness, her thoughts carried her back to the crying tree. Soon, she drifted into a dream, and it was no ordinary dream, but one that felt as real as the earth beneath her feet. She found herself standing in a clearing, the moonlight shining through the tall, twisted branches. Before her, a man appeared, taller and more handsome than any she had ever seen, his skin shining softly, his eyes dark and full of sorrow. But what drew her attention most were the chains wrapped around his legs, winding into the roots of a great tree. His eyes met hers, and though they were sad, they held a pleading, a longing that tugged at her heart. Then she saw a woman standing behind the tree, her laughter sharp and cruel, echoing through the clearing like the cackling of a hyena. Her hair was dark and wild, her eyes burning with wicked delight. She waved her hands as if she commanded the very wind. And every time she laughed, the chains round the man's legs tightened, the roots twisting and groaning. Adaora stepped closer in her dream, her hands reaching out, but the earth seemed to pull her back, and she could not reach him. "Leave him," she shouted, her voice shaking, though no sound came out. The woman only laughed louder, tilting her head, her shadow stretching over the men like a storm cloud. "Foolish girl," the witch said, her voice like dry leaves snapping in the wind. "You cannot free him. No one can." Not yet. Adaora felt her chest tighten. Tears ran down her cheeks in the dream, and the man's eyes filled with silent sorrow. "Help me," his lips seemed to whisper, but the words vanished with the rustle of the roots. She tried to move, tried to run to him, but she was frozen, as though the forest itself would not allow her to touch him. The wind howled, the roots groaned, the chains rattled, and she awoke with a sharp gasp. Her body shook violently, her heart pounding like a drum in the still night. She clutched at her thin blanket, the cold sweat soaking her hands. It was real, she whispered to herself, her voice trembling. It was him, the tree, the man, the witch. She pressed her face to the floor, trying to calm herself, but sleep had left her, and only fear and longing remained. Before the sun had risen, Ugoma's voice pierced the house like a spear. Adaora, why are you still here? Did you forget the firewood? Are you trying to anger me? Adaora scrambled to her feet, pale and shaking. I tried, Mama, I went to the forest, she stammered. Enough of your excuses, Ugoma snapped, grabbing a thick stick from the wall. You return with empty hands after hours of wandering in that cursed forest, you useless child. Do you think I will allow this laziness? She struck Adaora across the back and arms. And the pain made her cry out, Please, Mama, I tried, Adaora whimpered. But Ugoma was relentless. Adora's father sat under the mango tree, watching quietly, his face pale and silent, afraid to speak, afraid to intervene. Adaora sobbed, the sting of the blows mixing with the memory of the dream, the sorrow of the man in the tree, and the cruel laughter of the witch. The sun rose higher, casting golden light across the compound, but there was no warmth for Adaora, only the ache in her body, the fear in her heart, and the memory of the man who called her name from the shadows of the forest. Even as she washed her tears and tended to her wounds, a small, trembling voice whispered inside her mind, I will help you. Somehow, I must. And though she did not yet understand how, the seed of courage and curiosity was planted, ready to grow, even in the cold shadow of Ugoma's cruelty. The next evening, after the long day of chores and the endless scolding from Ugoma, Adaora felt a strange pull in her heart. The memory of the tree, its trembling leaves, and the sorrowful sobs of that unseen voice would not leave her mind. Her fingers itched to touch the rough bark, her eyes searched the dark corners of the compound as if the forest itself called to her. When Ugoma dozed off in the firelight, muttering about yams and cooking, Adaora whispered to herself, I cannot stay. I must go. I have to know. She slipped quietly from the house, careful not to wake the children or the stepmother, her small feet making no sound on the red dirt. Her heart pounded in her chest, a drumbeat of fear and longing that seemed to echo in the empty night. As she approached the edge of the forest, the shadows of the trees stretched like long, reaching arms. Her breath came fast, her palms were slick with sweat, but she took a deep, trembling breath and stepped into the darkness. The forest was alive in a way she had never noticed before. The wind whispered through the leaves, carrying the scent of earth and moss and something sweet, almost like distant flowers. The path was tangled with roots and fallen branches, but she moved slowly, carefully, each step guided by the memory of the sound that had called to her the day before. The further she went, the quieter it became, until all she could hear was the beat of her own heart. Then, from the deepest part of the forest, she heard it again. A soft, sorrowful sound, almost like crying, but gentler than the day before. She froze, clutching her basket tightly, her legs trembling. A small voice spoke in the darkness, and it made her skin crawl and her heart leap at the same time. Do not be afraid, Adaora, she gasped, her eyes widening as she looked around. Who is there? She whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. The rustle of the leaves seemed to gather into a shape, and she saw the familiar, enormous tree standing before her. Its bark glimmered faintly in the moonlight, and the sap that had run down its trunk before now glowed like tears of amber. I heard you yesterday, Adaora stammered, stepping closer, her basket forgotten on the ground. You called my name. But why do you cry? The tree's branches swayed gently. Though there was no wind, a voice, soft and gentle this time, spoke directly into her mind, wrapping around her heart like a warm blanket. Do not fear me, Adaora. I am more human than you think. I have been trapped here for many years, but my heart is still alive. My soul still feels, and I have waited for someone with a heart as kind as yours to hear me. Adora's eyes filled with tears, part from fear, part from wonder. You can speak, she whispered. A tree cannot speak. I am not just a tree, the voice said, low and trembling with sadness. I am a prince, cursed to live in this form by one who hated the choices I made. But I have lived alone too long. You are brave, and you listen. That is why I speak to you now. Her small chest heaved. A prince, she said, disbelief and curiosity mingling in her voice. But, trapped in a tree. How can this be? The voice was patient and gentle, like a father comforting a frightened child. All will be revealed in time. But for now, know that I am real, and that you are safe here. Do not be afraid, Adaora. You have nothing to fear from me. Adaora knelt slowly before the tree, her fingers brushing against its rough bark. She could feel something warm, almost like a heartbeat, beneath her touch. I am not afraid, she whispered, her voice shaking. I want to help, if I can. Your heart is pure, the voice said, soft as the wind through leaves. That is why you have been called here. Do not turn away from what destiny has placed before you. And for the first time in her life, Adaora felt a strange sense of peace, as if the forest itself had wrapped her in its arms, telling her that though the path ahead was unknown, she was no longer alone. Her heart still pounded, but it was no longer from fear, it was the quickened rhythm of hope. Adora's fingers rested lightly on the rough bark of the great tree, her eyes wide in wonder and fear. The gentle voice that had soothed her before now spoke with a weight that pressed into her heart, a sorrow so deep that it made her own chest ache. Adaora, you must listen carefully, the tree said, its leaves trembling as if nodding with each word. I am not as I seem. I am no ordinary tree. I am Prince Obina, heir to a powerful kingdom beyond these hills, a kingdom of wealth, wisdom, and warriors. Once, I walked as a man among men, beloved by my people, destined to rule with justice and courage. Adora's breath caught. A prince, she whispered, stepping closer, as though the weight of the word might break him free. But, how can a prince be a tree? The tree sighed, a sound like wind passing through hollow wood. Many years ago, I faced a choice I thought I could make with my heart and honor. There was a woman, Neddy, a witch of this village, feared by all. She demanded that I marry her, saying I could not refuse, that she would bind my fate forever if I did. But I saw her heart, Adaora, cruel, evil, without mercy, without love. I could not give myself to such darkness, not for power, not for life itself. So I refused. Adaora shivered. And she cursed you, yes? Obina's voice rumbled softly, like distant thunder. Enraged by my defiance, Neddy unleashed her wrath. She turned my body into this tree. Wrapping my very soul within these roots, she bound me to this forest, so that none could find me, so that I might rot here for all my days, a prisoner of her fury and her magic. My people believed I vanished, lost to the world, but I remained, unseen, unheard, waiting for a heart brave enough to see me as I am. Is there no way to break it? Adaora asked. Her voice small, trembling. No way at all. The leaves rustled, as if the tree shook with emotion. There is one way, the prince said softly. Only true love, freely given, can break the curse. Love that is not asked for, love that is not earned through fear or duty, but love that comes from the heart without question. That is the only thing that can free me from this prison of bark and root. Many have come close, but none have dared to see beyond the shape I wear, beyond the sorrow that clings to me. Adaora pressed her forehead against the rough trunk, her hands trembling. But, how can anyone, love a tree? Obina's voice was gentle, patient, full of warmth and hope. Adaora, it is not the shape that matters, but the heart. And your heart, I can feel it. You are kind. You are brave. You have suffered, yet you remain gentle. That is why I speak to you. That is why you are here. You are the first to listen, the first to care, the first to see me as more than a prison and more than a curse. Adaora pulled back slightly, her eyes filling with tears, a mix of fear and awe. Prince Obina, I don't know if I can help you, but I will try. I will listen. I will not run away. The tree's leaves rustled softly, and a sap droplet fell like a tear onto her hand. That is enough for now,